When a tragedy occurs, it can be hard to talk to your child about what happened. How do you explain it? How much will he or she understand?
Joining us this morning once again is parenting expert Dr. Natasha Sharma with tips on helping your child cope. So good to see you.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Difficult time for parents right now trying to explain what's been going on.
As an expert and as a mom of two yourself, here we are again. It was just a few months ago when you were here talking about the Yonge Street van attack and how do we broach this topic. So what do you recommend this time?
Well, you know, because there's a few events that have occurred in such a short span of time that we can get this sort of false sense of insecurity around our safety. And I think I still maintain that with younger kids, it's best not to bring it up. You know, the really little ones, sort of under 8 or so. If they haven't brought it up themselves, I wouldn't bring it up with them. With teenagers and older kids, they might know something about it. They probably will. So you could ask them about it. You know, you could say, have you heard about this? Yes or no. How do you feel about it? And is there anything you want to talk about? But I would sort of, you know, keep younger kids away from any graphic news footage and be just really careful about projecting some of our own reactions to this onto them.
Now, and if they don't, if they don't want to talk about it, what do you let it go at that point? I have a 10-year-old son, and he's a boy.
Yeah. And
so how do you get them to either respond, or do you just let it go?
I think let it go. I mean, if they seem to be distressed after they don't want to talk about it, and that could look like a child whose mood has changed, or they're getting, you know, more withdrawn than usual, so they don't want to go outside, or they seem to be more afraid to go out in public and do their usual things. You know, no one should feel unsafe, especially still in this city. We don't want to get this idea that we can't go about and do our normal routine and enjoy the public the way we always have. So if you have a child who's expressing fear of doing that, then you might have to sort of go in a little deeper. But if, you know, for example, if your son doesn't want to talk about it, I wouldn't push it. Just say, okay, it's okay to not have a strong emotional reaction to it as well for children.
Or let's say if it manifests itself in different ways, like tummy aches, or maybe they're not sleeping properly. If they don't want to talk about it, can you still say something to allay their fears without going through the actual events that unfolded?
Yeah, I think if you see behaviors in your child that seem unusual or different than their usual self, so you know, if they're sleeping or eating differently, or if they're just feeling sicker than usual, they don't want to go to school or outside all of a sudden, then, you know, you might have to broach that topic with them, or just maybe ask them. It's better to ask an open-ended question. You don't seem like yourself. You know, is there something bothering you? You can talk to me about it and see if they'll open up about it.
And in locations, because these are very public locations, if your kids are worried about going to those areas, what can you do to try and allay those fears?
You know, we live in sort of this climate where there's so much bad news and fake news and so much access to news, and we have this overrepresentation of the negative. So, you know, with that, psychologically, we can get this, again, that false sense of not being very safe. So I think it's very helpful to remind ourselves that the chances of something like this happening to any one of us, certainly in this city and most parts of this continent, is really rare. So I think it's important to remind our children and ourselves of that this is, you know, we should continue to enjoy our lives in the very same way we did before this unfortunate event.
And you can focus on the good. I love that you say you can make them helpers and thank the helpers. So how so?
Well, you know, when things like this happen, what's interesting to see, or maybe not so surprising, is that people will step up. You know, my favorite part of the radio, as I was talking about earlier, is the feel-good moment of the day, where they talk about the good stories, and we just don't get enough of that. And, you know, when things like this happen, it's remarkable to see how many people who are there standing by, or passerby, or just people who were around them, rush to the aid, or just do anything that they can do. People really do step up, and I think it's good to also place focus and emphasis on that, remind people that there's a lot of good in the world.
And we saw that on Sunday night. We were talking about that yesterday, the number of people who risked their own lives to help people. It was incredible.
Yeah. Yeah,
great advice. Thank you so much. For more information, we can find you on Twitter at Dr. Natasha Sharma.
Yeah.
And breakfasttelevision.ca will provide a link as well. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
We'll be back with more BT right after this.